Well, the weather is ass, and after all, I do live in Colorado. It's currently snowing here. Oh my god, what is wrong with you, God? Why do you hate us? I guess we'll talk about the new Ghostbusters, because it's called Frozen Empire. Why not? So I think it's safe to say, how about I give my thoughts on the other Ghostbusters films? I won't do a review of the 2016 one because, yeah, that's a whole video in and of itself, along with all the other Ghostbusters movies, but I'll get my thoughts on them as quickly as possible. So, first Ghostbusters, obviously, fantastic movie. Ghostbusters 2, now, funny story about Ghostbusters 2. I only just now started watching Ghostbusters 2. I never really grew up with it. I understood its issues. Don't know what that's doing on my desk. I understand its issues, but it's just, you know, me personally, I'm not like a massive fan of it. I think it's fine. It's entertaining. There are a bunch of missed opportunities and missed moments that could have made the film better, but you know what? It's kind of whatever. 2016's Ghostbusters reboot. Yeah, it's there. Yeah. I have nothing more to say about it, so I'll give my. And then Ghostbusters Afterlife, which to me is the second best Ghostbusters. Now, I know it was pretty controversial, specifically one moment near the end, which I won't go too deep into unless you've seen the previous film, but, the girl I was dating at the time, we both loved it, we both really liked it, and it was a cute movie. I thought it was a decent continuation, and that brings us into Frozen Empire. And I I don't want to say it's bad, but it is significantly not as good as any of the previous versions. I'd say it's tied with Ghostbusters 2 as being the worst one, to be quite frank. And in terms of Ghostbusters 2016, I would rather watch this film than 2016's Ghostbusters, but that's the biggest positivity I can give it. I would rather watch this film than 2016's Ghostbusters. But then again, that's not saying a lot, considering that there is a ton here that's just. Let's get into just a lot of the things that are just wrong with this film. Now, let me start with the movie's positives. Thank you. Now, let's get into the rest of the movie. Okay, I'm obviously kidding. This movie does have its merits. There are hints of fun in this. And that's partly why I just really did not like it as much, is because there are moments of fun. There are moments. At one point, one of the actors said this was kind of going to be like a live action version of the cartoon. Now, even though I never watched the cartoon, I get why people liked it and understood why they liked it. And to an extent, it is kind of like the live action cartoon. There are moments where it's kind of just as fun. You get some cool ghosts here and there. You get some moments like Melnitz in uniform. It's in the big trailer and everything. It's in all the advertisements. It's a big moment. You get, the statue coming to life in the library. It's all good fun. It has its moments where it is really entertaining and fun. One character in particular, I can't pronounce his name. I don't want to goof it up. I don't want to jack it up, but he plays a significant role. Now, at first I did criticize it because I thought it was kind of stupid. And in reality, it is kind of stupid because they introduce, like, fire gods, essentially. They just introduce this airbender, like, literally straight out of the Avatar Airbender series, where he shoots fire. It's an actual plot point in a Ghostbusters movie where he shoots fire and destroys the villain. Spoiler. But at first I didn't really get it, but looking back, they did explain he was like a descendant of one of these fire gods, and that's why he was able to harness fire. But I thought it was just kind of silly, kind of stupid, but you just got to turn your brain off and just kind of go with it. So there's that. The original cast returning, even though they feel like glorified cameos, they're fine. They seem to be having like a fun time, particularly Dan Aykroyd. He seems to be having the most fun. Patton Oswalt returning. He was pretty cool. Not returning, good guy. He was the he even. Patton Oswalt returning. He seems to be having a good time. He seemingly likes to have his moments in this movie. So, he does okay. But everything else, besides hints of fun, this movie's rather dull. Bringing it back towards the positives real quick, near the beginning, and partly why I even remotely enjoyed this movie to an extent, is the beginning scene with, the Spangler family chasing this ghost, which you've seen in all the advertisements. It's a pretty fun moment. There was a movie clip that surfaced online, and thankfully I didn't watch it, but in the theater, I had a fun time watching it. It was a cool moment. It was a fun moment. It was all right. But, like I said, from then on, the movie just kind of turned dull. And by God, the cameos. Poor Slimer. My man deserved better, but he gets banished to the attic, and he barely shows up. Now, this movie is packed with nostalgia and callbacks to the other movies, and not as much. And granted, Ghostbusters Afterlife had its fair share of callbacks, even down to having Gozer return. But this movie's callbacks, sure, they half the time they show up like that. Just like I mentioned with Slimer, he shows up briefly, he's banished to the attic, he barely does anything. He attacks Trevor in one scene, one of the characters, slimes him. That's it. There you go. Trevor tries to lure him out, tries to capture him, doesn't really succeed. And that's it. Barely shows up. He maybe shows up maybe a third and final time near the end, but otherwise, he doesn't do anything. You get the librarian ghost from the first movie. Okay. You got Walter Peck returning as a city mayor? Sure, why not? Oh yeah, and Dana Barrett, who appeared in the last movie? Yeah, she's just gone. Doesn't even get mentioned. Oh yeah, and this scene that showed up in the trailer and in all the promotion videos. Yeah, gone. Now you're probably wondering, compared to all the other villains of the franchise, whether that be 2016's random ghosts that pop up, including Rowan, but we're not going to talk about that, Vigo, Gozer appearing twice. You're probably wondering, how does Garaka, I believe the ghost's name is in this. You're probably wondering, how is this ghost compared to the others? Now, I'm not gonna lie, he's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool ghost. Yeah, and in the middle of the movie with Patton Oswalt, he gives the backstory on Garaka. You get this really cool kind of stone wall backstory of this ghost and kind of like this stop motion format, and as little as he's shown on screen, he's pretty pleasantly intimidating. He's very domineering. It's a very, visually interesting ghost, as well as frightening to an extent. Until he gets taken out like a chump within, the last 15 minutes of the movie. And that's kind of the main problem with this movie, because of there is an overabundance of characters. Excuse me. There is an overabundance of characters, from the original characters to the two cameo sort of characters to the newer characters that this reboot is presenting. There are no stakes. And because of that, Garaka just gets taken out. In fact, the last 25 minutes of this movie, you probably get, the whole Ice Age coming in. I mean, it happens at a very fast pace. And because there's so many characters, I mean, heck, the last final battle, instead of them going out into New York and maybe battling a little bit, maybe getting an idea of like, okay, are people frozen? Are they killed? Are they shattered? There is none of that. They are trapped in the firehouse, just basically facing off against Garaka. One ghost that can possess inanimate objects has the car turn evil for a minute, try and backs them into a corner, and it's just, there's no stakes, because by that point, then you just get a whole bunch of Ghostbusters just zapping this ghost within 15 minutes, and he's gone. And he disappeared. And because of all the other ghosts going around, the movie ends with them going to capture all the ghosts, and Walter Peck reluctantly saying, we need the Ghostbusters. I tried to avoid spoilers with this, but I cannot. This movie just quite literally makes it impossible. So I apologize if you went into this expecting no spoilers, but if you've known for the rest of my videos, I don't do spoilers a whole lot. And yeah, this movie just does not live up to and I didn't go in with no expectations. I didn't have any expectations going into this film. I thought it'd be fine. I thought it'd be somewhat okay. My throat's dry. But no, it's just underwhelming and to an extent dull. And I know some people said that Afterlife was a bit dull, but at least that movie had some sort of life to it. This one, it starts off well, and then it just kind of farts around, setting up the villain, and has a handful of ghost moments before eventually just going into it just squeaks to the climax. Like, as quickly as it's just bizarre in a way. It's just weirdly bizarre. Now, there's one other thing I forgot to mention about this movie. Now, Phoebe Spangler from the first movie develops a sort of spiritual connection to a ghost played by Emily Allen Lind, who appears in this movie as a ghost that's all flamey that died in a house fire. And the movie implies that there is, even though it's like a spiritual connection, the movie sort of implies a much deeper connection. I don't know, found it odd, but it was also kind of a, weirdly sweet moment. And this is also why the movie also turned me off, and not for the reasons you might think. I think it's perfectly fine if they were implying something else. I really do think it's not that bad. What bothers me about this in particular is the fact that this character is being, influenced by Garaka and tries to, have her betray Phoebe by having Garaka possess her so he can come to the actual realm and be awakened, basically. I don't even know how I remember that. I must have been falling asleep, but it's not even that difficult. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. Phoebe, they have this device that just quite literally, can, suck a person's spirit out for 30 seconds, and that's what Phoebe does. It's almost kind of like a weird suicidal thing where it's just like, I want to become a ghost for a minute. And that's how Emily Allen Lind kind of gets Phoebe to, become a ghost, and Garaka returns, and then the climax happens. So, and I'm not even mentioning, Trevor's. I still need to look up the actress's name. I believe her name is, oh man, this movie. I swear, my brain's already melted from this movie. We're talking about this movie. Trevor's little love interest from Afterlife. they barely get to interact with each other apart from a couple of scenes. There is so many characters, so many plot points that this movie juggles a lot. It's just a mess. It can't focus on one thing. It wants to tell the Spangler story. It wants to tell, the Garaka origin story to go with the Spangler stuff. I mean, it juggles a lot, along with the classic nostalgia of the original films. It wants to juggle that. It wants to juggle all the ghosts. There is so much here that in the end, it's just a giant mess. I apologize this video for going over long. I just had to talk about it. It's not a bad movie by any means. I don't think it's like terrible. I do think it's watchable. It is entertaining to an extent. I just do think it is dull for what you get because it's just, there is not a whole lot. And like I said, I didn't go in with much expectations. So I ended up liking it a wee bit more than I thought. But if I did go in with expectations, I probably would have loathed it. So I would strongly caution you, if you're a huge Ghostbuster fan, you might like this. If you're like me, where you're a Ghostbusters fan and you have expectations for it, please do not go in with expecting anything. Even though I just gave away the entire plot, if you are expecting this to be good, don't expect that. Because then you're just going to be disappointed. You're going to think this movie is a big whole pile of trash. But it's not. It could have been worse.